Hello, my art friends. This week we're going to focus on textures. Please remember that texture is the way that something feels. So when we draw a texture, we're drawing the way that it should feel. Now, this is the paper that we would use if we were in school so that we can work on practicing drawing many different textures. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each texture one by one, showing you how to draw that using a pencil. You can go into our Google files that are attached to this assignment and you can print a copy of this paper. You do not need to print this. You can use a blank sheet of paper and just write the name of the texture next to it when you practice it. So grab that paper and a pencil and let's get started. So I'm going to zoom in today just a little bit so we can see this a little bit better as we create it. So experimenting with different textures, and the first one that we come across is fur. Thinking about fur on an animal, they're usually long, wiry hairs. Okay, so those are straight hairs, sometimes a little bit wavy, sometimes even a little bit curly, and they usually go in all different directions. So in order to create fur, I'm going to use my pencil and I'm going to create many different lines of different thicknesses, different lengths, kind of just going around. I'm going to layer them with new layers of hair, making sure that each set of fur touches the set below it. That way it's as if it's all connected. Pencil problems. Right. When I go on to the next one, I'm thinking about spikes. This is really an easy one because we're just using our zigzag lines. The difference is that when we draw the zigzag lines and layer them one on top of the other, we make sure that they are touching each other. Oh my goodness, Fontaine is going to need some new pencils. By layering this, it creates a spiky look. This, my friends, is why you do not use mechanical pencils. We're going to switch to a regular pencil now. So, on to my next one, which is one of my favorite ones, is bubbles. When I make bubbles, I think about blowing bubbles in the summertime. When I do, they come out in all different sizes, and they usually have somewhat of a reflection on them. So when I create bubbles, I'm going to create bubbles in varying sizes. Some of them are completely on the page, some of them are not. I'm going to create many different sizes, kind of adding them in here and there. And on the largest sizes, I'm going to create a reflection line. That's a line where the light is reflecting off of the bubble. Moving right along to hammock. Hammock is just taking a regular line, a diagonal line, and kind of giving it a bump and crisscrossing them over one another. So I'm going to kind of bump like that. And I'm going to make sections of lines, filling my space. I'm going to then go the opposite way. Creating what looks somewhat like a hammock. Now, sand is always a favorite because sand is just dots. But I want you to notice that I do not make a lot of noise when I'm making my dots. You don't want to hear this. No one wants to hear that. So just pressing, yes, it's still going to give a little bit of a sound. It's not as loud, it's not as repetitive. And you can actually color tiny circles if you wanted to. creating just a grainy texture of sand. Bumps, we create a bumpy line like a cloud line, starting from the bottom and going up. Create each layer of bumps so that they touch the layer below them. I continue this on until I filled up the entire space. I imagine that there would be bumps here. Moving right along onto cactus. A cactus has lots of wavy lines that kind of go up the cactus. So I start by making these kind of wavy lines, following the wave from each line to the next. Added in a new little wave right there. And then to add a little bit more to this, cactuses have these prickly little things on them. So in order to create that, I'm just going to make a lined star in different spots. I'm not going to create them all in a row because that's not very realistic. And there we have cactus. Tight bubbles is one of my absolute favorites. I want you to think of bubbles, but times 1,000. So again, I'm going to start by making those big bubbles. And then what I'm going to do, instead of filling in with medium and small size bubbles, I'm going to go through the entire section, making tiny, tiny bubbles all the way around. I'm going to add just a few more big ones right there. And then I'm going to start. And I'm going to fill that entire space. These are not going to look perfect. Think about the dishes in the sink, maybe a pot or a pan that's soaking, it has soap and hot water in it, and the whole top is filled with bubbles. That's kind of what this looks like. This is a texture that takes a lot longer to fill in, just because there's so many tiny spots, but it's very beautiful and eye-catching when it's created. Again, this is one of my absolute favorite textures. Hurt your hand a little bit. There you have it. We've created an entire side of textures. Let's move on to the next side. Swirls is creating spiral lines that connect to one another in different sizes, going in different directions. Kind of looks like Cinnabons. Making sure to go lots of different directions, lots of different ways. On to fish. Fish is just like taking bumps and going upside down. So this time I'm going to start from the top. And again, I'm going to make those large bumps coming down. And I'm going to make sure that they connect the bumps on the line below them. Each bump connects to another bump. This looks very similar to what fish scales would look like. Now, bricks is one of my absolute favorites, and I know I've said that a few times, but I really enjoy bricks. And bricks is one of those that it's very easy to make mistakes on. Lots of times we just want to make lines going this way and then lines going that way, but that's not correct. Think about the cinder block bricks that are in the classroom. Think about a brick house. The bricks kind of layer back and forth one beyond the other. So I started making some lines going across. And I make some vertical lines going down, leaving small rectangles. When I move to the next row, the vertical line should be in the middle of the brick above it. Continuing that way all the way down, where the lines never touch one another from row to row. That's how you make realistic bricks. Now, thinking on to wood. Wood has grains, wood has circles and lines and natural designs within it. So in order to create that, we start by making some of those designs or markings and then work our way around with the lines that the wood would contain from the natural way that the trees are. So I'm going to start by creating just some spaces. And then I'm going to start all the way at one end, creating lines. These lines are going to go around the little designs that I made. And all that's doing is creating a very natural look. Now I can darken in those larger spaces, but it creates that realistic look of bricks. Of wood. And I really absolutely love this one. So moving right along, I have woven. And woven is lines that kind of interweave with one another. There is a lot of erasing involved with woven. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that before they start to create it. It's very important to know that there will be a lot of erasing involved. So I'm going to start by creating a line that goes straight across. And I'm going to create a line directly below it. I'm going to repeat the same set of lines right down here. Imagine that those are two pipes running across a room or two pieces of thread. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create over and under lines going vertically. So the first line I'm going to create will go over both of these lines. What I'm then going to do is use my eraser to make this a complete line. The next vertical set of pipes or lines going down will be behind. So I will create that line going all the way through and behind. And I will repeat this step over and over until I fill the space. Now, of course, I can get a little bit more tricky and I can go under and over in each individual line as well, but that does get a little tricky. So with this, we're just going to try our best to create these over and under lines. Kind of like a woven basket. Moving on to rhino. Rhino's skin is very tough. And if you actually look at it, it actually looks like a plates of armor. So to create rhino skin, we actually create these fun squares and big squares. And I make sure that all of the squares kind of overlap and they kind of go with one another. And then inside of each of those squares, I'm going to create another smaller square. Imagining what will be behind each section. And of course, you can get lost just creating lines in here. I might not even know where all these lines are coming from anymore. But it has a really cool square inside of square look. The last texture that we're going to do together is cobble. And cobblestones are found under the streets of some of the roads in New York City. There are some that are still left as cobblestone. And what that was is it was many different stones put together and they created a road using them. So it looks similar to brick. Instead, it's going to flip and kind of go vertically, and they don't all have to be the same size. So when we create cobblestone, imagine that the road was laid out in long vertical lines just like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn these into stones. I'm going to make those edges a little bit rounder. Don't worry about the other marks that we've left there. And I'm going to fill each section. And what this is going to do is this is going to create that cobblestone look. Again, these don't have to line up. There's no rule or any real reason to put them together. So there you have it. Create your own at the end is for you to find a texture in your house and create your own drawing of something that you find. That could be a feather, it could be a carpet, it could be a blanket of some sort, or even just the feeling of a table or a type of wallpaper. Good luck. I can't wait to hear about the textures that you drew.